everyone. My name is Phil Triandafilopoulos. I'm an associate professor of political science at the University of Toronto, Scarborough, and the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy. Thank you very much for joining us today for the second installment of our Hellenic Studies seminar series. On behalf of everyone involved in the Hellenic Studies program, I thank the Hellenic Heritage Foundation for its strong support of all our efforts. I also thank the director of the Center for European, Russian, and Eurasian Studies, or CERES, Professor Randall Hansen, and my colleagues, the heart and soul of the Hellenic Studies program, Professors Themis Harabositas, Spiros Kotsovilis, and Robert Austin. All of us are in turn grateful to CERES's research program coordinator, Joseph Hawker. Our next session will be in January, and details will be available after the holidays. Today, I'm delighted to introduce our special guest, Professor Dmitris Christopoulos. Dimitris is a professor in the Department of Political Science and History at Panteion University of Social and Political Science in Athens. He was president of the Greek League for Human Rights and of the International Federation for Human Rights. Of particular relevance for us today, Professor Christopoulos testified as an expert witness in the civil law component of the Golden Dawn trial, which he will discuss. I would add a personal recollection. I first met Professor Christopoulos in 2005 when I was a postdoc at U of T, and he was a young assistant professor at Panteion. We were both in Chicago attending a conference of the Modern Greek Studies Association. The memory that stands out to me was Dimitris's dogged determination to see everything there is to see in Chicago, and there's a lot to see in Chicago. His itinerary was unrealistic and indeed preposterous, and yet, and this speaks to an important part of his character, he somehow made it so that we managed to see everything. We checked off every box. It was really an amazing thing. Professor Christopoulos will speak for approximately 40 minutes. We will then happily take your questions. Please post your questions through the Q&A tool for Zoom. Professor Christopoulos, please begin.
Hello from Athens. Hello, Phil. Thank you for your kind words. Indeed, it's not every day someone from Athens finds himself in Chicago, so we have to do our maximum in order to visit every corner of this lovely city. So thank you very much for the invitation. It is with a great pleasure that I am here with you today. It is 9 o'clock in Athens, so there is a 7 hours distance between us. I have been asked to speak about the day after the Golden Dawn trial, which is what I intend to do, share with you some of my experiences, some of my reflections, some of my analysis about the situation. And then, of course, I'm open to the questions that you might have, any remarks of yours, any clarifications, and so on. Indeed, as Phil Triandafilopoulos said, I was a witness some 2 years ago. That is a long trial which lasted 5 years, and I was one of the major witnesses that we had to actually prove that the Golden Dawn is not a political party, but it is a criminal organization, which is finally the verdict of the court. And we are very happy for that. And allow me to start with my conclusion, to anticipate a little bit by saying that what happened in Greece with the Golden Dawn trial is something which is really remarkable, not only for the Greek penal and criminal standards or the Greek criminal history, but also, I guess, for the international one, since it was the first time after the Nuremberg trials that we had a big penal trial for a whole political party in a country. And what is the major difference between what happened in Athens ever since the trial started in 2015 until a few, no, actually 2 months ago when the trial finished, is that we are not talking about a system of transitional justice that actually assumed the responsibility of carrying out this trial, but a normal criminal justice, a normal criminal court was the competent in order to find the verdict, which is something which is extremely important for the Greek polity, but not also. So by saying that, I decided that I would like to share with you some basic data on the Golden Dawn history and the pro-history, the genealogy, we'll say, of the far right in Greece. Then try a little bit to explain why and to what extent, what are the reasons of the Golden Dawn electoral emergence over the last year, what led to the court, what was the basic, what was the context actually which led Golden Dawn to the Court of Appeal, to the Greek Criminal Court, what is the outcome, and what is the day after, what are the eventual perspectives after this verdict. So generally scholars studying contemporary or post-war European fascism agree on distinguishing three periods of emergence of these fascist formations. Those three periods have been illustrated as three waves. The first wave, emerging right after the World War II, and extending until the mid-80s, more or less, is dominated by the classic fascist MSI party in Italy, which is a straight continuation of Mussolini's fascist party, and managed even to enter the parliament since the very first post-World War elections in 1948. Actually, the use of the term neo-fascism originates within this party. So besides the Italian neo-fascist party, we have NPD in Germany that never extended 5% in the Bundesbank. And of course, the first neo-fascist formations also, we have, existing countries that experienced, fascist regimes comprised mostly nostalgic supporters or immediate collaborators of the historical fascism. So that is something extremely important. Please keep the word nostalgia, which is I think the key word in order to understand the first wave of neo-fascism or neo-Nazi formations in Europe. Should that be, as we said, Italy and Germany, but also Scandinavia and Switzerland. The second wave of these formations start from the mid-80s in the early 2000s. And in this period, the tone is mainly set by the protagonist, which is the president of the Front National in France, Jean-Marie Le Pen, who introduced central elements of the politics, of the rhetorics of the party, all the discourse on anti-migration and the Islamophobic hysteria. Then we have also Haider's party, the Liberty Party of George Haider in Austria, the Flemish Vlaams Blok in Belgium, the Party of Progress in Denmark and Norway. So the characteristic of the second wave, if I might say, is the fact that during this second period, the explicit fascist character of the respective parties in Germany and Italy shrinks, and the success of the second wave is also led to the breakup of the system of the sanitary protection zone, if we might call it, implemented by the political system in order to isolate these parties. So the isolation which existed and managed to to survive until the 70s. So let's say 25 years after the 25, 30 years after the end of the Second World War, started to was less visible already in the 80s, and that is a result of the second wave, and that is mainly the big success of Front National, of Jean-Marie Le Pen himself, I would say, who was a great politician, and actually he's the one who have managed to offer to the European far right an exit from the sanitary isolation that existed until then. And then we have the third wave, which coincides with the beginning of our century, and I think Golden Dawn, the political party of Golden Dawn at the time, is par excellence the product of this third wave of such parties in Europe, along with the neo-Nazi party of Jobbik in Hungary, which represents the highest point of political polarization within this group. So during the crucial period of the massification of far-right parties of the second waves in many European countries, in Greece particularly, the memories of the dictatorship of 1967 until 1974 were still fresh in 1980, when we had the creation of this Nazi party, which is the Golden Dawn today. And obviously that is something which characterizes also, to a certain extent, the other two countries of the European South that we generally tend to compare Greece with in terms of political transition, and this is Spain and Portugal. The main characteristic here is that the far-right party, the far-right political expression and the far-right political discourse generally is kept within the conservative parties, should that be the Popular Party in Spain, or the so-called New Democracy, Nea Demokratia, which is the conservative party in Greece after 1974. So the memories of the juntas, the memories of the dictatorship are still very fresh, and will not easily allow the emergence of an open fascist political formation in Greece in the 70s, in the 80s. That is why Golden Dawn, when it all started in the early 80s, I mean, the name Golden Dawn appears in 1980 as a club of nationalist, socialist, national socialist education, which led to the publication of a magazine entitled Golden Dawn. At the time, being a Nazi, being a fascist, being someone who openly expressed the political beliefs of far right in Greece was something which was completely politically, socially, and morally unacceptable, due to the fact that until 1974, the country had suffered from the military dictatorship and of the colonels, and actually the fact that we have the big trauma of the Turkish invasion in Cyprus creates, let's say, a kind of feeling that the fascists, the Greek fascists, were responsible about this trauma, and due to this fact, even the authentic and original nostalgia of the dictatorship was not easily expressed in public. And Golden Dawn was one of the first political formations that not only expressed openly its nostalgia for the Greek dictatorship, but also expressed openly its affiliation, its admiration to the political discourse and the political and the rhetorics of Hitler himself. So at the very beginning, from 1980 until 2000, I mean, the first 20 years of the existence of Golden Dawn, which is during this period, we're talking about a marginal organization, we're talking about a pariah political organization. We have open and explicit reference to Hitler, to Goebbels, to Goering, to the classic Nazi and not even fascist rhetoric. I distinguish the two. I mean, when we're talking about the fascist rhetoric in Greece, but not only, when we're talking about the fascist rhetoric and the fascist political discourse in Italy and elsewhere, we address the omnipresent state, the totalitarian state, which is the big father there in order to protect. But when we speak about the Nazi discourse, its variation, we're talking about a discourse which is based on the belief that the nation is a biological collectivity, an objective entity based on origin, based on race. So we're talking about a perception of a racial nation. So within the classic Nazi discourse of the Golden Dawn, we have a reference to a particular biological perception of the Greek identity, which is not dominant elsewhere. I mean, the affiliation of the Greek national identity with the Orthodox religious identity is dominant everywhere in the Greek politics, but a particularly racist perception of the Greek political community is something which can be found only in the far-right rhetorics of Golden Dawn during that period. From the beginning of the 20th century until 2010, Golden Dawn remains a marginal political party, and the first time Golden Dawn appears in the Greek, in the central Greek political arena is the municipal elections in 2010, when the leader of Golden Dawn, Michalogliakos himself, appears as a successful candidate for the seventh circumscription of the sixth circumscription of Athens municipality, an area where we have a particularly tense situation with migrants and refugees. And so Golden Dawn there gets for the first time a percentage of 7 to 8%, which appears to be the highest, and it is with a big, and this is considered as a major surprise, the biggest surprise that we have until then regarding the Golden Dawn performances in the Greek elections. Ever since, Golden Dawn is rising. Yet, even though we entered in the we entered into the period of the what we call the Greek crisis today, after 2010 until 2018, Golden Dawn never managed to achieve more than 7% of the Greek electorate in any of the elections it participated. So we're talking about double elections, double national elections in 2012, the national elections 2015, two elections in 2015, and then of course we are talking about the absolute political defeat of Golden Dawn in the 2019 elections of July. So we are not talking about a marginal political party, yet we have to rationalize a little bit the situation and our perception of it. We're not talking about a central political player. And I think this is how we contextualize a little bit where does the Golden Dawn stand, where did the Golden Dawn stand until 2018 in Greek contemporary politics. In September 2013, Golden Dawn was extremely active, and I please note the date, save the date, because that is a very crucial date which changed the fate of the party. Until then, the Golden Dawn was following what a member, actually one of the major one of the protagonists of Golden Dawn, Ilias Panagiotou, said in an interview that actually he revealed how Gordon Dawn perceived the Greek politics until that date. And he used a term which carries a particular political and moral legacy for the Greek vocabulary. Any of you who are Greeks, I'm sure you are familiar with. He used the term, we are in a civil war. So in 2012, when Panagiotou said that, I think we started to understand what was the plan, what was the project of Golden Dawn. I will use the YouTube video in order to share with you the 3 minutes of this interview in English. I think you will find that revealing, and then we will continue. I'm sorry, for a reason that I do not know, the video does not seem to function. Can I get any help here?
Dimitri, I think I found it. Shall I share it on my screen?
Yes, yes, please do, please do.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm afraid I'm not able to do so. Joseph, are you able to do so? I can send you the link. Oh, hold on. No, maybe I can do this. Hold on. Sorry, my mistake. Good. I just have to get it to play the sound, excuse me.
I don't know why it does not function, sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
You have to make sure that the sound is also being shared.
The sound is not shared now.
No.
But you have to put.
No, that's not the issue. Why don't you?
Listen, forget it. I'll just tell you what the guy said, and I mean, if we cannot project it, I'm sorry. My apologies. I'm not good in that. So So, I mean, to make the long story short, Panagiotis there says to the British journalists that we are in a civil war. And the two parties, the two camps here are the following. From the one hand, on the one hand, it's us, the Greek nationalists, who will defend the rights of the Greek people. And on the other hand, you have the Greek anarchists and the migrants who want to destroy our society. So it is the first time that here we are talking about explicitly, I mean, the guys are saying that we are in a war. And when they are saying that, actually they imply that on the one hand, it's them who are supposed to be leading the one side, and on the other side, you have you do not have the bankers, you do not have the rotten capitalists. You know, he does not use any of the words that generally Golden Dawn was using until then, but he only targets the two groups who generally are perceived as threats by the Greeks today, and these are the anarchists and migrants. And there Panagiotis actually says that we are going to do what it takes in order to defend our society. And in order to defend our society, we will use violence. So there we are. There we can see that we have a certain strategy of tension, which is applied by the Golden Dawn. What is the strategy of tension? The strategy of tension is the strategy which was invented actually by the Italian fascists and the neo-fascists in the 70s, which consists of raising the tension of violence, actually implementing acts of serious political violence everywhere in different domains of social life, hoping that this violence will trigger reactions of the political opponents. So by beating, for example, migrants in the streets, by stabbing migrants, by beating anarchists, by doing this kind of stuff, which was generally a practice of the Golden Dawn in different areas of Athens, Golden Dawn really expected and hoped that this could lead to a reaction coming from the other side, and this could lead to a war. And then, of course, that is the classic outcome of the strategy of tension. Then the question, the dilemma for the Greek, petite bourgeoisie, or for the Greek conservative electorate will be, which side are we? I mean, who do we prefer? The anarchists or the fascists? And generally, the hope of the Golden Dawn was that the major preference will be shown to them. And that was not completely stupid. That was not dumb. And they were not far from achieving that. They killed two migrants. They implemented a kind of complete isolation in certain parts of Athens where they were ruling the territory. They were expelling migrants from these parts of the territory, and generally they were trying to show a very socially sensitive face to the Athenians. And there were a lot of Athenians that really believed that, after all, why not them? We are talking about a period of a deep financial crisis of the country, which led to a moral delegitimization of the political elites in the country, which is still present, but at the time it was really extreme. So this strategy of tension delivered results, but also created and contributed to the formation of a feeling of arrogance. And arrogance is never a good counselor in politics, even for the fascists and the Nazis. And the result is Golden Dawn went too far. And one of its members, in September 13, 2013, killed the Greek rapper Yorgos Fissas in somewhere very close to the port of Piraeus in Athens. And that was a very bad decision because they went too far with that. And although Greeks could not associate easily themselves with an Afghan refugee who died stabbed from Golden Dawn members in 2012, although the Greeks could not associate themselves with some Egyptian workers who were stabbed to death by Golden Dawn members. The murder of Pavlos Physsas was an alarm for the Greek society, and ever since things have changed. Things have changed. The Golden Dawn was accused as being a criminal organization, and the Greek judiciary decided to show that it really exists after 6 or 7 years of being absent from its duties. So that is how it started, and that is how it ended a few months ago. I will return to the issue of the trial and the verdict and the day after, but now I will go back a little bit to the roots of to the historical roots, to the reasons of to the rooted causes of Golden Dawn. Why actually is the Greek far right considered to be probably one of the most extreme rights in Europe? That is one major question. And how on earth actually in Greece, a country that has suffered so much from the Nazi occupation, we managed 70 years after to have a party that it is openly a pro-Nazi party. Well, there are reasons for that. There are historical rooted causes for that, and there are also what I will call the triggering events of this situation. So what are the rooted causes? The rooted cause of that is the fact that the far right political and ideological legacy is present throughout the Greek 20th century. So generally in Europe today, when we speak of the far right, we have we generally follow a kind of naive moralistic, discourse which actually presents the far right as a political alien, as a political UFO. Well, things are not that simple. If the far right was a UFO, it would have been much more seldom in our political scene, in our political horizon. Obviously, the far right is nothing, is not an alien. It is our child. I mean, we Europeans and we Westerners, we like to associate our political legacy with, liberties, human rights, rule of law, democracy, and so on. Yet there is the dark side of the moon, which is present, and the dark side of the moon is the most atrocious political experiments ever carried out in human history. It's Nazism, it's the Holocaust, the genocides, and so on. So they are among us. They live among us. They are here. They used to be here. The Greek far right has a long-standing experience, a long history, which goes back to the beginning of the 20th century until the beginning of the 21st century. And that is not something particularly Greek. That is something that you see in most of the European countries, as I tried to show at the beginning of my lecture. So nothing particularly Greek to this point. After the 2012 and 2015 elections, when we were looking at the electoral results, we've noticed that the Golden Dawn highest electoral percentage, highest electoral performance, was not in parts of the Greek of the country that are facing problems with migrants, because until then the belief was that it was migration which triggered the Golden Dawn, let's say, as a political success. Whereas in 2015 already we were able to identify that Golden Dawn achieved its best electoral performances in Greek regions that had already a very strong and solid historical legacy of far right, a very strong historical legacy of collaboration with the occupation forces, a very strong anti-communist political past during the Civil War and during the first years after the Civil War, and a very big support of the dictatorship. So all this has nothing to do with the migration crisis that Europe went through. Let's say migration crisis, I put that in brackets because that was never a crisis, a migration crisis. You cannot call migration crisis a situation where 1 million individuals enter a continent of 500 million. Yet I use the term crisis only just for the economy of the discussion. So in all these regions, I mean, Sparti, Laconia, Corinthia, half of the Peloponnese, half of central Macedonia, northern Greek territories, we had nothing. Migration was never an issue. And there, despite this fact, Golden Dawn was extremely strong in these areas, which means that history counts. And I'm saying that as a general conclusion. When we're talking about such political entities, history is always present. And I think whenever we analyze the context, it is wise to excavate in the past to see what connects, what are the links connecting the present with the past. Actually, many of the protagonists of the Golden Dawn today were children and grandchildren of infamous Greek collaborationists during the occupation, and members of the most atrocious Greek paramilitary groups of 1944 to 1949. So that is the first reason. So the first reason is history. It's history. It is history not only in Greece, as I said, it's history everywhere. And when we look back in history, it is wise to see our face in the mirror from all sides. So we generally tend to camouflage our sins. We generally tend to to present the happy side of our history. Well, the dark side is always there, and only if we escape from hiding it, we might be able to learn some lessons. Generally, we do not learn anything from history, despite the belief that history is there to serve as a lesson. Because if we were able to learn from history, we will all have been much wiser today and much more mature, which is not the case. So the first rooted cause is history. The second rooted cause is the ideological penetration of the Greek, the most trivial beliefs of the extreme right in the neighboring political parties, generally in the Greek mainstream. So the social pervasiveness of the ideological perceptions that form the basis of the far right ideology all over in the Greek political spectrum, from the right wing to center right, even to center left, I will say, which is Greek nationalism, Greek racism, and sexism, if I will use three terms, who are not only peculiarly attributed to Golden Dawn in Greece, but they could be found everywhere in all political parties, even in the left. And so again, the penetration, this pervasiveness of the far right perceptions in the mainstream political discourse is something which is not, again, only a Greek symptom. This is the major French symptom, as we said. And what happens when the mainstream political parties adopt or integrate some of the perceptions of the far right, is that the far right appears much stronger and consolidated. And as Jean-Marie Le Pen said, everyone believes what we're saying about migration. We are the only ones who have the moral and political courage to say what we believe. And we are the original and they are the replicas. So they are the copies. So the wise electorate, the wise people choose the original. And actually that is true. The more the mainstream political parties adopt some of the presumptions of the far right in Europe, the more far right becomes a major political actor. And this is what we're seeing today in most of the European countries, including France, or I would say particularly France in this very moment. So these are the two major rooted causes of the emergence of the far right in Greece at the beginning of the 21st century. I will be a little bit, I will analyze a little bit more the second part, this ideological penetration of the far right beliefs in other political parties. The more we give vital political space to ideologies such as racism and nationalism, which has been the case with Greece over the last 30 years, the more we legitimize the far right. And if we really want to see what is the main reason why Golden Dawn became, let's say, an accepted political figure in Greek politics in the 90s, we have to go back and remember what was happening in Greece back then. What was the political climate? What was the political, let's say, what was the feeling at the time? The feeling is that the country is becoming important, the country is becoming powerful, and the collapse of the countries of of the Eastern Bloc by the time led to a situation where, as you all know, I guess, Greece entered into the dispute about the name of the then Socialist Republic of Macedonia. So the first time the members of the Golden Dawn made themselves visible in the Greek public sphere, it was in the rallies that the Greeks held in the early 90s against the use of the name Macedonia by our neighbors. So if we really want to find what triggered, what amplified the presence of Golden Dawn in the Greek daily life, we have to look ourselves at the mirror and we have to say it was the Greek nationalist discourse which allowed the Golden Dawn to be one of us. Because what the members of the Golden Dawn were saying back then was nothing different from what the members of the two major political parties were saying, which is that Macedonia is Greek and Greece is Macedonia and blah, blah. So I think that if the Greek political system wants to do a certain a sincere self-critique of its own performance, we have to go back and look and see what we did with Macedonia, not only as a politics which destabilized peace and stability and friendship in the Balkans, but also politics who allowed the Nazis to become a trivial political party. We accepted to be in the same rallies with Nazis. We accepted to shout the same political devices. We accepted to be under the same flag with the people who are the children of the collaborationists, who represent the major threat of not only Greek democracy, of Greek independence. So I think that certain level of self-critique is absolutely and urgently needed in that regarding the issue of the name of Macedonia and the amplification of Golden Dawn performances during that period. The second triggering event, which allowed, of course, the Golden Dawn to consolidate its electorate, particularly in Athens, is what we mentioned at the very beginning, is indeed migration. We're talking about the classic European issue of migration, xenophobia, racism, and so on, instrumentalization of xenophobia and racism by certain political parties, including the far right. Golden Dawn as a Nazi party and as a party who does not anymore dares to reveal its Nazi identity, but it speaks more or less in the name of the Greek nationalism. So all these guys already in 2012 will not openly say that they are Nazis, but they will say that they're Greek nationalists. I think that, as everywhere in Europe, migration is the triggering event par excellence of the far right political discourse in Europe today, and that was also the case in Greece. Last but not least, I'm talking about the so-called triggering events of the emergence of Golden Dawn, is the participation of a far right political party, the Party of Laos, which stands for Popular Orthodox Alarm, a party which was headed by a very well-known Greek far right wing journalist Yorgos Karatzaferis. And again, here, this guy managed to enter into the Greek government in 2012 when we had a coalition government which was created in order to face one of the most difficult moments of the Greek bailout agreement and the Greek financial crisis. Then the two other parties accepted this guy to be a member of this coalition, even though, despite the fact that this government could have been formed in 2012 without the participation of Laos Party. So the guy entered into the government. So it is the first time that we saw this. How should I call him? I don't want to qualify him, but it's the first time we saw someone like him being in a Greek government. So that was already too much for us. So that was the green light for Golden Dawn to become more powerful, to obtain more political force, and to obtain more political and moral credibility into this period of the Greek crisis, again, which had triggered a major feeling of disapproval of the credibility of the Greek political elites. So that is the background, and this is the context that I felt like that I have to share with you in order to understand why we arrived to the situation of this strategy of tension, which sent Golden Dawn to the court, and then the trial. I will finish with a few remarks about the trial. That was the longest criminal trial we had in Greece over the last 50 years. Actually, it is the biggest trial we had after the end of the Greek dictatorship. 18 members, the high-ranking officials of Golden Dawn, were already incarcerated at the beginning. The verdict of the court is that Golden Dawn is not a political party. Golden Dawn is a criminal organization. I think that is a major decision, a major jurisprudence, a major case law for European criminal history, because what is important here is the fact that the Greek judiciary faced Golden Dawn with its normal arsenal, normal penal arsenal, the Greek penal code. And so nothing exceptional was used here, which is something that has to be acknowledged. So the Greek provisions of the criminal court that criminalize the organized crime were used here. So actually, Golden Dawn was treated as a mafia, to be honest, and that is how the Greek judiciary managed to depoliticize a little bit the decision. Of course, the Golden Dawn members present themselves as political prisoners. They believe, they say, they support that they have been convicted for their beliefs, and so on. The fact is that they were not convicted for their beliefs. They were convicted for the activities which was dictated by their beliefs. So actually, if Cassidiaris, let's say the former number 3 of Golden Dawn, wanted to have a tattoo on his arm with a swastika, he is free to do it. You can even sell a swastika in Greece. It's not like France or Germany where swastikas are illegal. We are more or less in the American tradition of freedom of speech in this country regarding such ideas, beliefs, or products. But you cannot use your swastika as a motivation for participating in criminal activities. And this is what happened with the Golden Dawn. I think it was obvious that all these crimes which have been conducted by the members of these organizations did not happen because these people were accidentally there, did not happen because these people had I don't know, had an individual idea, individual perversion of killing or doing bad things to other people, but it was a part of a political project. It was a part of an hierarchy, a part of a structured unit which obeyed to the one-man principle, the Führer. The Führer was Michail Oliakos himself. That was proved during the court due to the revelations of Greek journalist Dimitris Psaras, who managed to bring to the court the original statute of the Golden Dawn, where it's obvious we're talking about a Nazi gang. And this is where we stand today. It is obvious that the people who have been incarcerated and who are in jail now, who served a sentence of 8 years for having participated in the organized criminal organization of Golden Dawn, will send the case to a court of appeal. So we expect to have a second court in Athens in a year or so. That is what I expect. Maybe it will take more because due to the lockdown, it might take longer. What else? I think that if we have elections, when we're going to have the new elections coming, Golden Dawn cannot be a candidate. Golden Dawn cannot participate as a party because the Greek judiciary has found that Golden Dawn, at least at first degree, is a criminal organization. So this party cannot be present in the next Greek legislative elections. Of course, there is a big discussion about the political rights and the right to elect and to be elected for some of its members. If you want, I can develop that during the session of questions and answers. But the truth is that despite the fact that Golden Dawn is dismantled from an organization viewpoint, obviously the soil for the development and for the for the development of the beliefs and the major perceptions of the far right in Greece are still present. So obviously the court decision has been a historical decision to the extent that for the first time during our republic, the Greek judiciary faced such an organization. On the other hand, it's obvious that a court decision is not enough to deal with such beliefs in Greek society. And the truth is that, unfortunately, the beliefs that correspond to what we consider in political analysis the far right or the extreme right in any of its historical forms are present in Greek politics today. So Greek nationalism, racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, and to this extent, Greece is no exception to other European countries where we face obviously similar patterns. Anti-Europeanism, racism, perception of national singularity, and so on. Yet a major step has been done with the verdict of the court. I think this has been a historical moment uh, uh, of victory for the Greek Republic. It is not the victory of the Greek Republic, because the Greek Republic, as every republic, is tested on a daily basis. As the newly elected American Vice President said, democracy is praxis, democracy demands sacrifices. We had sacrifices in Greece. Pavlos Fissas has been sacrificed for the sake of the Greek democracy. Javed Aslan, an Afghan refugee who was assassinated by two Golden Dawn members in 2012, has been sacrificed in the sake of the Greek democracy. So what we need to do is we need to keep our eyes open, because nothing goes without saying. And we generally tend to see that everywhere in the world, including my own beautiful country. I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope I was able to solve some of your questions, and I am open to any of your remarks. Thank you again. The floor is yours, Phil.
Thank you very much, Dimitri, for that very rich talk. We have a good audience today. A lot of people took time out to listen to you and to ask some questions. We have several excellent questions, so I'm going to pose some to you. First, did political support for Golden Dawn simply dissipate, or have Golden Dawn supporters switched to supporting the governing center-right New Democracy Party? And what are the likely implications either way?
I don't know, to be honest. I think that one of the major challenges of the Greek mainstream right, of the Greek Nea Demokratia, is how to conciliate, how to balance between um, the extreme right, which is already in this party, and the center right liberals, such as the Greek Prime Minister, for example. So in Nea Demokratia, historically, we have both of them. We have both tendencies, as the French, or as the Spanish Popular Party, or as the Portuguese parties. So this explains actually why in Spain we did not have a Golden Dawn party, for example. So I believe that most of these people are going to, a big part of them will return to new democracy, but a considerable part of them can vote whatever. I think that the major, we do not know yet the answer to this question. I think we will know the answer if there is going to be a challenge of within the Greek Conservative Party, a challenge of splitting. So if the Greek Conservative Party does not manage to deal with the very difficult situation we have in Greece, on the aftermath of the Greek financial crisis, the pandemic, a very fragile situation socially and politically. If Nea Demokratia does not manage to survive and there is a split within the party, then obviously the members and the supporters of Golden Dawn will support a new Greek anti-European right-wing party, which will not be Golden Dawn, but is, as they say here, a serious Golden Dawn. So an obviously non-Nazi far right-wing party, classic nationalist populist party, as the French Front National. Because actually what Golden Dawn paid is the fact that they were Nazis. And in Greece, it's not easy to say that you're a Nazi. So if you have a classic populist nationalist party which has nothing to do with Nazis, I think that obviously the 7% of the Golden Dawn electorate will easily go there, but along with that, much more important number of Greek citizens. I believe that such political beliefs are shared by at least 15% of the Greek electorate. So, but it all depends what will happen within the Greek Conservative Party.
Well, then Greece is very much in line with every other electoral democracy I'm aware of. If it's roughly between 15 to 20% of the electorate that share such views, this is not, as you pointed out earlier, a distinctively Greek situation. It gets to
Obviously, we need to say that. Obviously, you did very well to highlight that, because generally there is a lot of discussion going on about the Greek singularities and so on. Greece is a normal Western democracy facing exactly the same threats and challenges as the ones most of the Western democracies are facing today.
Well, then, just to build on what you said in your answer to the last question, what made Greece distinctive, I think, you'd probably agree, but I'll wait to see what you think, is that no other European country suffered a 25% hit to its gross domestic product in light of austerity measures taken because of its economic situation. And my understanding was that Golden Dawn's support was built not only on ideological affinities of people in need, but also by a kind of social politics. So in some neighborhoods, providing access to goods that were otherwise unavailable through charity, roughly, to put a point on it. Now, the question I have is, has the situation improved to the point where that strategy is no longer effective? And to tie it to another question from our audience, who is paying for all of this? Who is paying for those charities and that sort of door-to-door, hand-to-hand politics at the depth of the recession?
The charity campaigns that were organized by Golden Dawn during the very difficult years of the Greek crisis were a very good communication tool of Golden Dawn in order to show its socially sensitive agenda. Yet it was more or less, it was only communication. It was these charity campaigns were not so extensive, were not so big. I mean, you had some charity campaigns in some poor parts of Athens, which were not that important in terms of financially speaking. So Golden Dawn tried to present that as a major activity, but in practice it was not that important. So we do not have to to believe that that is something that really counted. And it was not that expensive. I mean, they were doing that with the salaries they got as members of the Greek parliament. As members of the Greek parliament, they were obliged to return to the party a percent of around 30% of their salary, which allowed them to buy a few things and to show that they were socially sensitive. The major, Phil, I believe that the major reason of the emergence of Golden Dawn during the crisis is not the financial crisis as such. It is the fact, it is the domino effect of the financial crisis to the political and moral crisis in the Greek agenda. It is the fact that the financial crisis consolidated the belief that the Greek politicians are completely rotten, corrupted, blah, blah, all this kind of vocabulary that is extremely useful for the fascists. So the financial crisis was one of the triggering events of the emergence of Golden Dawn. But the most important, and I said that at the beginning, that is my belief, it is the loss of the moral credibility of the Greek political ruling class. And I think that this is what triggered the 7% of Golden Dawn, and not its social agenda, which was, by the way, extremely weak. I mean, apart from that, during its short parliamentary life, Golden Dawn always voted for bills defending the rights of Greek sheep owners and so on. So it was a fake social agenda. In practice, the agenda was a classic reactionary one, as every far-right agenda.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is as follows. The Golden Dawn was very popular among some police units, especially riot police, and probably still is. How do the political parties with the will to do so address this pervasiveness of Golden Dawn in the police force?
Oh, yes, that's a difficult that is a difficult issue. That's a difficult issue because even today we have an authoritarian way of acting within the Greek police. Indeed, in 2012 and in 2014, we've managed to identify that the Golden Dawn had achieved its best electoral performance in the polling stations where Greek policemen and Greek riot police were voting. So we're talking about some 25 to 27%. So it is indeed true that we are talking about a very important penetration of Golden Dawn within the Greek police. That is something which was never dealt with very, very seriously. Even during the government of CERES, I believe that this issue was not dealt with the appropriate seriousity. We prefer to cover it a little bit. Yet, I believe that it is not as difficult as it seems. I mean, if the Greek police or the Greek judiciary does its job, and if we have incidents of racist police violence, or if we have incidents of extreme or abuse of violence by the police to demonstrators and so on, and if the perpetrators of such acts of violence are dealt with seriously, should that be in a disciplinary level within the Greek police or in a criminal level, I think that the message will be sent to the Greek police. The Greek police is the arm of the Greek state, as the Canadian police is the arm of the Canadian state, as every police is the arm of the state. It's not the state itself, it's not the head of the state. So if the head gives an order to the arm, stop it, the arm will seriously consider to stop it, because the Greek policemen are people who are normal people like us. They will not like to see their jobs lost. They will not like to face disciplinary measures and so on. So if there is impunity, obviously such behaviors will continue to exist. But if there is a sign of accountability, I think it is only a matter of time to create a police which will liberate itself from such reactionary reflex. This is not easy, again, but it is feasible.
Thank you. I have to congratulate our audience. There are many questions and there are many good questions. So I'm going to do my best to relay them to you. The next one is on the point of regarding former Golden Dawn members being allowed to run for future elections. So not under the Golden Dawn banner, because you've made it clear that's not possible, but certainly some former members can run. And the question is, can you speak more about this issue, as well as give us your thoughts on the appearance of Ilias Kasidiaris' Greeks for the Fatherland party?
I will start with the party of Kasidiaris. Don't take that very seriously. It's not something serious. So I think it's a grotesque party which has no future, because after all, Kasidiaris is already behind bars and he cannot run the party. So I will not spend more time on the discussion about him. So the first part of the question is extremely relevant, and thank you very much. As I said during my lecture I was about to answer. Listen, obviously, given the circumstances today, before the final decision, before the final verdict of the court of the last instance, these people can run for to elect or to be elected. And to be honest, I think that obviously this is a contradictory situation. This is an oxymoron. I think this issue will be dealt with by the Greek electoral legislation, not by the criminal legislation. I believe that such an issue should not be an issue for the criminal legislator, but should be an issue of the legislator himself or herself. So this is an issue of the Greek parliament. So I believe that the Greek parliament has all the opportunity and all the time it needs now in order to pass a law which will provide that people who have been convicted for being members of criminal organizations, even at first instance court, might not be allowed to present, to be elected in any public office in the next national elections. And this can be done. And I think that is a solution which corresponds to all rule of law standards of the European Convention for Human Rights. I have to be very severe with that. I do not like to, I do not stand for the position of beating Golden Dawn at all costs. This is a game that has rules, and these are the rules of rule of law. So we have to go by the book here. We cannot beat the enemies of democracy by beating democracy as a political system and as a system of rules. So I think that we've managed to do that until today in Greece, and I hope we will remain in this path.
I think that provides an answer to another question about whether this strategy can be used to combat other extreme right-wing parties in Greece. And if I'm reading you correctly, unless they carry out criminal acts, the answer is no. I mean, fringe ideologies, fringe political positions do not constitute criminal conduct and therefore cannot be opposed through the same judicial measures.
Absolutely. I add nothing to what you said. I only add that there is a discussion that such a case law here will not be used only for extreme right political parties, but for extreme left political parties also. And the answer is what you just said. So it's not an issue of judging beliefs, it's an issue of judging actions as such.
Right. Thank you. Well, while we're still on the topic of beliefs, we have a question here. I have long looked for some self-criticism in Greek politics, and not just on the Macedonian issue, but also on the politics and policies towards Albania and Albanians in the 1990s, and the Greek policy in the Yugoslav wars. How realistic is it to expect some reckoning with these mistakes?
Obviously, this is a question that does not have a relation with Golden Dawn, but of course I will take it, and I thank you very much for that. I happen to follow very closely the Greek-Albanian relations, and I also wrote a book about the Greek minority in Albania, and I follow very closely Albanian politics over the last 30 years and the Albanian history. So I have to tell you that in 2012, in 2018, at the very moment when Greece was signing the Prespa agreement with North Macedonia, the two ministries of foreign affairs, the Greek and the Albanian one, were not far from signing another agreement, which was about to find a solution to many of the pending issues that we have between the two countries, pending issues regarding perceptions of history, pending issues regarding very practical issues regarding Albanian properties in Greece and so on. That was not done, and unfortunately we carry the weight in order to achieve an agreement with Albania in the forthcoming years, which will not be that easy. Self-criticism is not a strong point in Greek political behavior. I said that obviously, so I do not expect any further amplification to my initial conclusion. But how should I say? I mean, we try, and there might be, time heals, if I might say to my friend who seems to be very interested, who is very interested in what happens between Greece and Albania. Time heals, and generally, when we speak of the Greek-Albanian relations, the way a lot of Greek and Albanian historians see this is more or less based on the history of the Cold War, the history of the Albanian minority in Greece, and so on and so on. But today in Greece, we have 600 to 700,000 Albanians. We have a second generation of Albanians who is born here, a third generation who is already here. Most of them acquire the Greek nationality, and they represent a new generation that does not carry all the negative legacies of the past. So I think that these kids are the future. So it will take some time, and these kids also will show the way to a more self-reflective and self-critical perception in both Greek and Albanian politics, obviously, because self-criticism is obviously lacking in Albania also.
Thank you. Our next question brings us into the current moment of difficulty. Is the economic and social crisis triggered by the pandemic likely to give rise to extreme political forces? Not necessarily the same, but similar to Golden Dawn.
I don't know. I mean, I think that is a major question that is relevant for most of the countries of the European Union, and therefore it is relevant for Greece also. As you well said, Phil, 15 to 20% of the electorate of most of the Western countries regard, democracy as a problem. So, to this extent, Greece is no exception. The pandemic is present, is here in order to amplify such feelings of conspiracy theories, blah, blah. As we said, the situation, the social and the economic situation is already fragile here at the very moment that when the country was about to find a way out of the former economic crisis, this new pandemic crisis started, and the situation is extremely bad, worse than other countries. To what extent this will lead to the emergence of a new political actor is the big question, which is related again to the developments within the Greek Conservative Party. I will not repeat myself because I said before some of my reflections on that issue.
We have a very interesting question that builds on that last point and some of the other points you've made. If support for Golden Dawn, as you suggested, could be interpreted as a consequence of a increasingly illegitimate political system and a crumbling party system.
Moral failure.
And yes, and in some sense, a vote to register popular discontent with incompetence. How do you see what are the central outlets now? I mean, the biggest outlet at that time was CERES, but CERES, after a term running the country in power, is not the same party that emerged as a source that one could register one's discontent into, if that makes sense, right? It's no longer a protest party. It's now a party of the political system, the formal political system. The extreme right alternative has been rendered impotent by legal processes. So where is the room electorally, not in the streets, but through the ballot box, to signal that we are not satisfied with what our governments are providing? I think this is an important question.
It's obviously a very important question. And again, here I have to repeat myself by saying that this is the major political question everywhere in the world, particularly in Greece. As you said, the singularity and the particularity of Greece has been Syriza and the volume of the Greek financial crisis. Obviously, Syriza is not anymore a party which can accumulate the protest. So if there is going to be protest here, it will come from the extreme right, and it will be the result of political mobilization, which will not be controlled by Nea Demokratia. Ever since its creation, Nea Demokratia in 1974 has been playing a very, very difficult political game of balance, which is to gather within the party every right winger from the extreme to center right. Until the emergence of Golden Dawn, they have been managing very successfully to do that. It is only with Golden Dawn that they lost it. Now, they are also trying very hard in order to achieve this balance. And this explains the fact why in this party, in the Greek government, you have political figures of the center right or even coming from the center left who are implementing the liberal agenda of the Greek prime minister, coexisting with political figures that originate from the extreme right and use a very obvious reactionary and harsh political vocabulary and discourse coming from this side. So indeed, if we see the Greek political sphere from a certain distance, I think that the possibility of an intense mobilization will come from the extreme right, and this will be the moment where the capacity of Nea Demokratia to apply this coexistence will be judged. I do not know whether we will manage to do that. I do not know where Greece will be in 12 months from now regarding the situation of the pandemic. I do not know where we're going to be with our financial adventures. I do not know where we're going to be with Turkey and so on. So there are a lot of parameters of providing a comprehensive answer to this question. And there are a lot of things that we do not know. We are in an absolutely uncertain point in time in global history, and particularly in our history. So if the pandemic is a big question mark for everybody in our world, in Greece you have to add two more particularly Greek question marks. The second is the Greek financial crisis, which was already a very fragile soil for the pandemic to come. And the third question mark is the Greek-Turkish relations.
So you can turn off your crystal ball momentarily and put your historian's hat back on, because this question is backwards looking. And it is, how much did foreign and domestic, although if I may add to the question, it's especially interesting to think about foreign media coverage and domestic media coverage impact the rise and fall of Golden Dawn?
I don't believe that foreign media coverage impacted the fall of Golden Dawn. I believe that a team of Greek investigative journalists headed by Dimitris did the major part of the work. So if we owe to someone, is to him, and not to anybody else.
I'm going to take I'm going to ask one of my own questions. So you said that part of what enabled Golden Dawn was a permissive ideological context where most parties shared some positions on the nature of the Greek nation, on Greek nationalism, on issues relating to relations with neighboring countries, etc. Now, as you know better than me, there are many of our colleagues in political science and sociology in Europe and North America who say part of the problem is that politicians in the center right and center left parties would prefer not to talk about or try to deal with the nation, right? And so they counsel a strategy of giving majority populations some say in debates over identity politics, right? The argument is that you can't simply give subaltern groups, minority groups a say in identity politics, that the majority should also have a voice, or else it will be attracted to extreme alternatives such as Golden Dawn. You seem to make the opposite case, but I'll let you put it in your own words. Do you disagree with these folks? How do you see it?
I think that the way you framed the last remark is what happens exactly in France today. So yes. Exactly. So I believe the opposite. I believe that the more vital space we provide to such ideologies, the more these ideologies become trivial parts of our political identity and of our daily life. So only if we are clear that we have to be against racism, we have to be against nationalism, but you cannot be against nationalism if you say that Macedonia is Greece. And who is more convincing when he says Macedonia is Greece? A young Greek politician with his suit and his tie, or a vibrant Golden Dawn member who shouts in the streets that Macedonia is Greece and you come and beat me? So I think that is the major problem we're facing today in Europe. Instead of believing that in order to isolate the fascists, we need to stigmatize not the fascists as political subjects, but fascism as political ideology and political discourse. We need to stigmatize Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, sexism, homophobia, nationalism, and so on and so on. Instead of doing that, we are trying to isolate the fascists. And that does not help, because in the same time, the road of welcoming ideologies of the extreme right is open. So I'm sorry to say that you might spend years in trying to isolate Marine Le Pen, but you will not do it, because in the same time, what you are doing as President Macron is feeding Islamophobia in your country, and this, instead of helping you become hegemonic, it helps the hegemonic views of Marine Le Pen become more convincing. And this is the problem France has. This is the problem that we have in Greece. But of course, in Greece, until today, we do not have a Front National. We had Golden Dawn. But as I said, Golden Dawn was unlucky. The Golden Dawn was a Nazi party. The Front National, under the daughter of its founder, is not anymore a Nazi party. It's not an anti-Semitic party. It is an Islamophobic party. It is a party who speaks to the heart of the French Republic Jacobin idea. So if you have that, then you should do what the Europeans used to do in the 50s and the 60s. Not try to isolate the fascists only, but try to isolate not only in words, but in practice, the roots and the major perceptions of the fascists and the extreme right parties. So if we carry out in Europe this migration policy, for example, how can you expect that you're going to eliminate the threat coming from the far right? How can you expect to do that? Europe today does exactly what the Prime Minister of Hungary wanted Europe to do 4 years ago. How you expect to discredit Mr. Orban? The fascists today, this neo-fascist or post-fascist, call it whatever you want, movement, is not a pariah political movement that says, okay, that's what we want. No, it wants to become central in Europe. I mean, I think we know that. I mean, Orban himself said that in the early 90s, we wanted to become like Europe. And now we want Europe to become as we are. So I think that is crucial. So, and I think that the discussion about migration is a key element in order to understand this political development. As long as we are following an anti-migration discourse in Europe, we are feeding the moral credibility of the far right because they do it better than we are doing it.
For the last question, I'm going to try to join two questions, and I think it builds nicely on what you just said at the end of your comment. One is, you said we're not very good at learning historical lessons, but let's say we were, hypothetically. What lessons can we draw from the Golden Dawn case? And then what could we do to have a better outcome? What could we do with respect to reforms in education, with reforms in other institutions, with reforms to public discourse, in order to not keep repeating the same historical mistakes?
So, as I said, it is my conviction that we cannot learn from history. It is a pretension that it's good to have, but we are always victim of our mistakes. Otherwise, humanity would have been already wise and will not have any problems to deal with. So that is an existential position of ourselves, that we cannot learn from our mistakes. What we can learn from the mistakes of the Golden Dawn case is that the sooner you act, the better. So if we have had the intelligence to act sooner, and we did not have to wait for people to get assassinated, then it will have been easier. So that is the first lesson. The first lesson is vigilance and alert. So we need to keep our eyes open and try to prevent the worst, which is to come. The second lesson is that again has to do with all the surrounding, the promising surrounding, the surrounding which allows the basic beliefs of the far right to become mainstream. And this has a lot to do with education. This has a lot to do with political communication, and this has a lot to do with social movements. So I say that there are three levels of this debate. The first one is the ideological one. We need to revise the way we see our history. I mean, I have a daughter, 14 years old, and I see the historical books, and I see that there is a lot of work which needs to be done in order to revisit our past, revisit our Greek-Albanian relations, revisit the way we see the Greek Civil War, revisit the way we see the Ottoman Empire. And the 200 years of the Greek Revolution is a good occasion to do that. The second, the political discourse, the political sphere, rules in the parliament. How do we deal with this discourse coming from the extreme right? What do we accept and what do we do not accept? For years, members of the Golden Dawn were an exemplary lifestyle for Greek media. So instead of isolating these people, we've managed to make them central political figures for the Greek youth. And third, social movements struggle for certain claims related to a better life. Not only claims coming from unions and so on, but claims who reflect our collective concern about the future of our generations. So social, political, ideological sphere, that is the only way to go. If you ask me if I'm optimist here, I have to tell you that I'm not the most optimist person in the world today. I believe that optimism can be a sign of liberal naivety to a certain extent, but I have hope. I believe that hope is the existential position to fight for a better world. We cannot do without hope. So hope instead of optimism. But at least we need to fight. Struggle is there. Nothing goes without saying. So today is the celebration of the 72nd anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, just open the declaration. Every single word of this declaration is relevant today. Every single right of this declaration is actual today. So let's think of that. Do not allow any Golden Dawn, any, I don't know who else, abuse our rights. I think that is the lesson. We need to keep our eyes open.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dimitri, for a really outstanding talk and discussion. I see from the comments in the Q&A that people feel the same way. And on behalf of everyone, I say we're very grateful and very thankful. And that will conclude today's seminar. We will continue the series after the holidays. On behalf of everyone affiliated with the Hellenic Studies program and with CERES, I wish you a safe and happy holiday season and a good new year. And we all hope, all of us, that the coming year, 2021, is an improvement over 2020. Thank you very much.
I thank you very much, Phil. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye.